Hey, college wrestling fans, it's JT1Wrestle here, and I once again have one of the greatest minds in college wrestling. I got the Swayze with us today. And so far, we have done the NAIA, we have done the NJCAA, and we have done NCAA Division III. Now it's time to take a look at NCAA Division II and the top 10 teams of both JT1 Wrestle and the Sways, where we would like to see college wrestling begin. So, Sways, go ahead and give us your number 10.
Yeah, so at number 10, I have a school out of Spartanburg, South Carolina, a place very familiar with junior college and NAIA. Both have gone away, one because they just dropped the program, the other because the school closed. But Converse, the Valkyries, I really like that area. I do think folks want wrestling there. And like I said, JUCO didn't work there, NAI didn't work there, but maybe third time's the charm with D2. It's also in Conference Carolinas, which I believe already has 6 members. So Converse University kicks it off for me.
Alrighty, great pick there in South Carolina. My number 10 is going to be the University of Colorado at Colorado Springs. The Mountain Lions, I think this would be a great program to have for various reasons. First and foremost, let's take a look at a couple different things here. Colorado already has a phenomenal NCAA Division II presence. We got Adams State, Colorado State Mesa, Colorado School of Mines, Colorado State Pueblo, and Western Colorado. They would be part of the Rocky Mountain Conference, which also includes Chadron State and New Mexico Highlands. And any idea where the headquarters for the Rocky Mountain Conference is? Happens to be in Colorado Springs. Let's also add in the fact we have NCAA Division One Air Force, and probably one of the biggest selling factors here is this is where the U.S. Olympic Training Center is. So, can I name any more reasons to have a wrestling program at Colorado Springs? I don't know, but I definitely want to see them add wrestling to their list of athletics.
Yeah, I like that call a lot. And a lot of people that aren't familiar with how we've been picking stuff, we like to pick stuff too based on the fact not only do we want it to be a men's edition, but a women's. When you have the Olympic Training Center right there, you talk about a juggernaut for the women potentially. It could just be phenomenal right there. Excellent pick there. I'm going to go with here's another mascot for you, the Reddies, Reddies, out of Arkadelphia, Arkansas. It's Henderson State. They've done really well in a lot of sports. It's also in the same city as Wichita Baptist. When it comes to their primary conference, they're both in the same conference. You could have a crosstown rivalry. But the thing with Wichita, they are an affiliate member of the MIAA. That conference has Nebraska, Kearney, Central Oklahoma, Central Missouri, Fort Hays State, Newman, and soon Northeastern State. It'd be an eye opener for them, but with the right hire, iron sharpens iron in that conference with those major players. So Henderson State.
You're always going to get a thumbs up from me on that because I love watching wrestling grow, especially in the South. My number 9 pick is kind of a fun one, and I don't think you're gonna beat me on mascot names here. This is probably the greatest mascot name there is. I'm talking about the University of Puerto Rico at Maguez, and they are known. Their men's team is known as the Tarzans, and the women's team is known as the Janes. So you got the Tarzans and the Janes, and they have a NCAA team right now that is head coach Preston Berry. So they already have a great wrestling presence on campus already. And can you imagine, for example, that they become an NCAA Division two team, you go to NCAA Division two nationals, they put somebody in the finals, and they run out beating their chest. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Like the way Tarzan did. Wouldn't that just be awesome? So I just to me, I've always wanted to see. I know a long time ago, I believe there was an NCAA Division three team in Puerto Rico. I think it'd be awesome to have another team there as well. They have hosted their conference tournament for the qualifier for the NCAA before, so I just think this would be something that would work and something that would be a lot of fun to see. So that's my number 9 pick.
I may not beat you on mascot names. And actually, I have that school on my list, but I have it as the Bulldogs. So
Yeah.
um,
You know,
maybe I'm a little, yeah.
no, I think you're right about that. I think what it comes down to is that it's one of those schools, sort of like Finley, for example.
Oh, yeah.
Finley, they're everybody else is called the Oilers, but the wrestling team is called the Roughnecks. I
Uh,
think it's one of those kind of examples.
okay. Yeah. But kind of like you mentioned, and I did have the fact that Preston Berry's there. He had a great roster. He had 15 on the roster. Plus something that I've learned about the Puerto Rican conference, which is what they're in, is if you're a Puerto Rican descendant, you could go to most of those schools for free. So I would suspect with a lot of Puerto Ricans that are in Florida and even New York, you could have one heck of a team there right away. So excellent pick. And I agree with you on that one. All right. So is it my turn now? Or
Yes,
no?
sir.
Or I'll say that one's my pick also.
Okay. All right. So I guess I'm down to number 8 then.
Yep.
All righty. Okay. So my number 8 pick, and I've gotten a lot of rebuttal on this. A lot of people, kind of have like a negative attitude, being like, it would never work there. We could never do it in this area. But here's I have a defense to this, and may I put on my Ben Madlock here, Ben Madlock hat on here for a second. My number 8 pick is Alaska Anchorage. And a lot of people look at Alaska and say, like, oh, we could never do wrestling in Alaska. Well, let's do a little history here. At one time in the NAIA, we had a program called Alaska Pacific. And not only did they exist, they thrived during their short period um, of having a wrestling program up there. A little history: what ended up happening is Alaska Pacific had no sports whatsoever. They hired an athletic director that happened to be a former travel agent, and he was like, "Oh, we can have sports up here." So they added, I can't remember what all they added, but I know wrestling was one of the programs they added, and they had it for about a period of 7 years. Now get this: in 1987, they finished second in the NAIA, and then in 1988 they finished fourth, and then in 1989 and 1990 they finished eighth, respectively. And then the program, along with all of their sports, ended up being discontinued. The reason I bring up Alaska Pacific is because anybody that has a pessimistic attitude that this could not work, well, you're wrong, because it did work. It has worked before. And what did work before could work again, which is why I think Alaska Anchorage would be a great addition to the NCAA Division II wrestling scene. Now, you may ask yourself, okay, how do we get teams up there? How do we get them down in the United States? Well, let me say this: the basketball team plays against Mary. The basketball team plays against Colorado State Pueblo. They have Simon Fraser up there with them. They go down to Cal Poly Humboldt. They've even traveled as far as Johnson and Wales for a basketball game. Why couldn't we do the same for wrestling?
Yeah. And to follow up on that, a lot of conferences, and I say a lot, but we have it to where necessarily you don't have to have required duels. So honestly, they could really do a lot of good things, right? You've got the Midwest Classic. They could fly to Indianapolis. They could fly down to Reno. We've seen a lot of teams test themselves. Unfortunately, Cliff Keynes no longer allow non-Division One programs in their tournament. Which, as
Another
somebody who
episode
wrestles,
for us.
yeah, as somebody who wrestled at the Cliff Keynes, that just irritates me. But they do have a lot of opportunities with a lot of tournaments up in that Northwest region too. The Mike Clock Open, and there's several solid NAIA programs too, and junior colleges that, if you get Clackamas coming up there or North Idaho College, you got some pretty tough teams. I don't care what division you are. So nice pick. It was one that I flirted with choosing, but ultimately I dipped out of that one. Let me go with what are we on?
This will be your number 8.
Number 8.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You sure it's not 7?
Well, yeah, because yeah, it'd be your number 8 because your number 9 would have been Puerto Rico along with me.
Okay, I've done Converse, I've done Henderson State, I did Puerto Rico.
Okay. All right. So maybe you did more. So
Okay.
that'd be 3. So it'd be 10, 9, 8. So this would be number 7.
Okay.
10, 9,
Perfect.
8, 7. Yep.
All right. So the one that I have here at 7 is the Mountaineers of Mansfield. And Mansfield is Pennsylvania and the PSAC. Uh, if you're not familiar with that conference, just rich in wrestling history. It is a conference also that it is a D2 conference. However, wrestling wise, you have 7 teams that are D2, but you also have a bunch of the D1s that were grandfathered in. So you got Edinburgh and Clarion and Lock Haven. So it's a wonderful conference. The PSAC tournament itself is a bit of a gem, but I like this school. No football there. It's in the north central, about as north and about as central as you can get in Pennsylvania. And it's just south of the New York border by 20 minutes. So I think there's a lot to be had there for the Mountaineers of Mansfield.
So my number 7 pick is you know, if you go back and read about the now I gotta think how many programs I'm up to now. I think with the unfortunate addition of Cleveland State, the unfortunate addition of Jarvis Christian, and the unfortunate addition of American International, I'm up to 487 programs that I have written about or I will eventually write about in my Gone Lost and Forgotten series. One of the most heartbreaking stories that I've read, that I've wrote about, studied and researched was the my number 7 pick, and that is the University of Minnesota at Duluth. We're talking conference champions in 1985, 1990, 1991, 1992. And may I add, also conference champions in the year that they discontinued wrestling, 1994. And they also that year had an NCAA Division II finalist in Ron McClure. So once again, they would still be in the Northern Sun Intercollegiate Conference, which still has a lot of great wrestling programs. We're talking about the Augustana Vikings, talking about the Minnesota State Mankato, Minot State, Jamestown, Moorhead. I'm not going to name every single one of them, but it's just a really good wrestling conference. On top of this, and I'll just come out and say it, this is a program that never should have been discontinued. This is a program that had no reason to be dropped whatsoever. It's pretty much dropped because you had an athletic director that wanted to put more resources, money. This is one of the first times I'll ever not say the word football. I'm going to say hockey this time. That's what ended up happening at Minnesota Duluth. And on top of it, they have a Facebook page, Minnesota Duluth Wrestling Facebook page, and it's very active. And you can tell all of these former wrestlers and people that had something to do with the wrestling program, they want wrestling back there so bad. So I know sometimes when you talk to athletic directors and you talk to them about possibly, fielding a program again, they're like, well, nobody ever came to watch it, or they try to give you the rebuttal that, not going to have an audience. I can already tell just by looking at this Facebook page, if you put wrestling back at Minnesota Duluth, they will pack that gym for home dual meets. I guarantee it.
Yeah, and that's something that's unfortunate whenever you do have, the 400 plus that have dropped. The one thing I think that does kill us is a majority, I think, well, you've got a few that are absolutely just killing it, have a great fan base. Nebraska, Omaha comes to mind when we think of great Division II programs that were dropped. But the thing is, we also have this let's be a superhero after the fact, and we have a lot of outrage that we really need the outrage to be butts in seats and money to programs. I don't know about you, but we have that wrestling shirt a day in May. I guarantee you, not a lot of people aren't paying for every single shirt they own. And I know I'm guilty of that too. And some of it's just because I do announce it on the side, and free will give it to me. But yeah, that's an excellent pick. My number six is going to be out of, first of all, I love the name of the city and I love the mascot. It's out of Pepper Pike, Ohio. It's the Arrows of Ursuline or Ursuline. Small enrollment, under 1,000, which I mean that is small for Division Two. Um, but it's in the same conference, the Great Midwest Athletic Conference, which is not technically, I believe, a wrestling conference, but they do have five teams already in it. So it'd be the sixth team. Lake Erie College, Thomas More is coming in, Tiffin, Findlay, and Ashland. Pretty solid programs in there. Of course, Findlay's been tough for years. Tiffin has been strong. Ashland has been strong. Lake Erie College is really one of the newer players. And Thomas More, you want to talk about an NAIA team that's they're going to hold their own in this conference. But Ursuline, the Arrows out of Pepper Pike, Ohio, is my number six.
Fun just to say, if you got an announcing job there, that'd be fun just to say that, just to be on there and be like from Pepperdine, so it'd be so cool.
Uh,
Pepper Pikes. Uh, all right, so my number six pick is going to be um, Biola, and that stands for the Bible Institute of Los Angeles. Now, I know you always love bringing up the National Christian College Athletic Association, so we're talking about the 1985 NCCAA champions. They win the title, and you brought up a little while ago University of Nebraska Omaha, which was told right after winning their third NCAA Division II title in a row, they were told they were no longer going to be a program. Same kind of thing here, not anywhere near as big in news, but 1985, they win the program, and then they're told, hey, just letting you know, congratulations on winning the program. We're going to give you wrestling for one more year, and then we're dropping it. Now, what makes this extremely interesting is the fact if you go and you look at the history of Biola athletics, their entire athletic history from the time they started sports until right now, right this second, wrestling was the only sport that they ever discontinued up until the 2018-2019 season when they discontinued golf. Wrestling and golf are the only two sports that have ever been discontinued at Biola. So, kind of an interesting fact there. Another interesting fact about Biola is I'm sure you remember him because I remember him as well. Three-time Pac 12 champion Jim Wilson. His
mm,
father, Paul, was a multiple, he won NCCAA titles in 1979 and 1980. Um, Jim Blagg, who was a um, who ended up winning in they back in those days they weren't NCAA Division II, they were also NAIA, and Jim Blagg won an NAIA title, and to this day he is the only national champion at any division that Biola has ever produced. So, you go back all those years later. I mean, I'm 40 years old, so over a period of 39 years, they have yet to produce another national champion in any sport. So we're talking about only being they're about depending on traffic, you're looking at about a half hour, 45 minutes from Los Angeles and the city of I think you pronounce this La Marietta. And they are also, if I'm pronouncing that wrong, Californians, I do apologize about that. But the reason I bring that up is because I don't want to, I'm taking a long time to say this, I'm not trying to. You'll notice that wrestling really grows when it grows in cities. Part of the reason why it's so big in New York is because it's getting bigger in the city of New York. It's really big. Wrestling is really huge in the city of Chicago. It helps to have wrestling popular in places where television markets are popular, which is why I wanted to see it grow in the city of Los Angeles. And then my last reason for picking Biola, it is ranked the number one Christian college in the entire United States and in all of Canada, which I think is another good point. I bring that up because, love it, like it, hate it, however you feel about it. Our sport is predominantly religious. A lot of people in our sport are Christian. A lot of people, go to private high schools that are Christian. Why wouldn't they want to send their guys, their women and their men to the United States number one Christian college? So that's my number six pick.
Yeah, you harped on that well, especially when you look at NAIA schools. Not so much a lot of the other divisions, but you do have that a lot of private schools that are really they have been what the surge has been for the growth of our sport in the last 5-10 years. So love that. Let me go to my number 5 pick. It's the Aggies of Cameron, and that is an Oklahoma school, and it is in Lawton, Oklahoma. No football program. They dropped football many years ago. You could still there's a stadium still on campus, but there's a few reasons I like this. It's a little bit south and to the west of Oklahoma City. By probably about 45 minutes to an hour. You can also get to Norman in about that time. Um, it also has a military base. So the amount of talent you could possibly have just moving in and out of that area, you could wind up with some stud that moves in their senior year, and some other places have lost track of where the kid is. So there's a lot of that stuff. Um, and I like that they could lure a healthy patch of talent from both Oklahoma and Texas is really not that far away. So I think there's a lot of talent in some rural areas there that some of those bigger city schools that are in Oklahoma that are in some hot pockets of, Oklahoma City and the suburbs of that, Norman, Stillwater's not super big, but it's you're a different market anyway if you're going to Oklahoma State. But I think it would be a smaller market that would very much appeal to smaller town kids from both Texas and Oklahoma.
You brought that up. I had Brian Kinney on the show yesterday, and he and I were talking about that. Northern Oklahoma, you added here a year ago. They're already had some success with two NJCAA qualifiers, and then next season we're going to have no, excuse me, not next season, this upcoming season. Also add in Murray State and nearby Murray State, and then also NCAA Division III. We're adding in McMurray as well. So you already have wrestling growing in that area. Why
Yep.
not add another team? So I love that pick. Great pick. All right, so JT1 Wrestle's number 5 pick here. I went all the way over into Los Angeles. Now let's go all the way across the whole entire country, some 4,000 miles, whatever it is. We're going to go to the University of Tampa. This is the home of the legendary Fletcher Carr, who won back-to-back NCAA Division II titles in 1972 and 1973. This is back in the days where you could also, if you won the national title in Division II, you could go on to wrestle in the NCAA Division I tournament, where he placed sixth and fourth, respectively. There are 14 NCAA Division II institutions in the state of Florida. None of them have wrestling so far. I would love to see all 14 of them have wrestling. And why not start it at Tampa? Because at one time Tampa had a very respectable team up until they were discontinued. Now, we've talked the Sways and I have talked a little bit about this before in the past about how, what is a short distance, what is a long distance. So if you look at the kind of schedule that you could have for Tampa with nearby teams, you're probably looking at most of them being like a 7 to 8 hour drive away, which seems really far away at first, but really for some programs it's not. So if Tampa were to reinstate, you could have Shorter, Emmanuel, they're about 7.5, 8 hours, have Montevallo and Alabama, Allen, nearby. You'd have Coker, you'd have Lander, you'd have Newberry. So they could put together a pretty decent dual schedule that's not too far away.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing too is sometimes it's good to have people that have been involved with wrestling that really appreciate the sport that are in the vicinity. Right there in Tampa, 2008, WWE Hall of Famer Gerald Briscoe has been instrumental in whether you like pro wrestling or not, which I don't get the animosity toward it. it helps a lot of guys have good careers and not work desk jobs. But he has been at JUCO events, NAIA, D2, D3, D1, recruiting our talent, and he is in the Tampa area. So I think there would be plenty of support down there. I love that pick of Tampa. You mentioned Alabama, so I'm going to mention Alabama in my 4 spot, the University of Alabama at Huntsville Chargers. First of all, Huntsville is a damn good wrestling community. Add in the fact, schools you said, Montevallo already having D2 success. I mean, in year 1, they had D2 success. You also have D3 Huntington down in Montgomery, not far away. It's good for the region that has plenty of talent to go around with many bigger metros within a 3 or 4 hour jaunt. I mean, Chattanooga is not far. Really, you can get to Memphis and Nashville, not too long of a drive. Atlanta, holy moly. You've got a lot of opportunities, but that area where in Huntsville, where University of Alabama Huntsville is absolutely wonderful too. So that's why I pick UA Huntsville as my number 4.
I here a while back, I had a former coach from Chattahoochee Valley, Ron Stubbe, and it was funny because I kind of asked him, I said, "You see wrestling growing more in Alabama?" And he said, "Yeah, I think we're going to get some more teams over the years." Ironically enough, that's what the first team he mentioned where he would like to see wrestling. So all great minds think alike. All right, so JT1 Wrestle, number 4 pick. I'm going to be quite candid here, and I could get in some trouble for what I'm about to say, and I'm okay with that because I feel very strongly about that, and this is my opinion. This is also backed up by research. My number 4 pick is going to be Truman State as my number 4 pick in Kirksville, Missouri, and I will come out and say it. We've talked about this before. I talk a lot about this in my writings on my Twitter post as well. You are only as valued as your athletic director values you. That's what it really comes down to a lot of times at these schools is does your athletic director value you or does he or she not? And in the case of Truman State, I will come out and say Jerry Woolmering, I think is how you pronounce his name. He did not value wrestling whatsoever. And if you want further proof into a guy that does not value wrestling, he is who Northern Iowa hired as their athletic director here not too long ago. I think about 2 years ago. And when I read that he was going to become the new athletic director at Northern Iowa, I just cringed. I just like, oh, it just made me sick. I went and took a cold shower and I scrubbed extra hard with soap. If you notice, look at all the stuff. Look at all the trials and tribulations that Coach Doug Schwab went through last year. You know, not having a place to wrestle, not having a place to practice, and still produced. My God, I mean, look at how good of a job he did. But it was in spite of Jerry Woolmering. Gave no help whatsoever. It's obvious he doesn't value the wrestling program there, and he's made Doug have to work extra hard for that. So that's why, essentially, if you look up the reason why, if you research it, they're going to say the reason they dropped wrestling was because the Great Lakes Valley Conference did not sponsor wrestling, and that's why they dropped wrestling, which is hilarious because soon after they made that statement that we're dropping wrestling because we're going to the GLVC and we're not and they don't sponsor wrestling, so we're going to drop wrestling for this reason. And then immediately afterwards, I think even before they dropped the program, the GLVC added wrestling as a sport, and they still they didn't refute on that. It's like, oh, they sponsor wrestling now, so we're going to keep wrestling after all. No, they still dropped it anyway. So as you can tell, I'm kind of passionate about this. But I would love to see wrestling back at Truman State. And another reason why it's one of the schools I thought about going to. I ended up ultimately choosing somewhere else, but Truman State was one of the schools I had on there to where I wanted to go when I was a kid. One of the, I think they narrowed them down to one of my top 5 schools I thought about going to. And also looking at it from an academic presence, they were the top NCAA Division II academic school in 2007, 2008, 2009, and 2010. So, yeah, recently Wolmering, when he went over to Northern Iowa, was replaced by I don't know the exact way. Well, my hair's bad hair day. Replaced by I believe Signe Combs is her name, And I would like to see if maybe, I don't know anything about her. She's pretty much brand new there at Truman State. But if there's any possibility of reinstating wrestling, I would love to do that there at Truman State.
So I tried on my list to veer from some of the ones that I knew had dropped recently.
Right.
Dave Shooter, the head coach at Truman State for 20 years from 1991 to 2011, I consider a friend. I have coached with him. I have heard some damn funny stories from him. One of my favorites I'll share real quick is Truman was wrestling the University of Central Oklahoma, and Truman is definitely academic. They have some tough kids. UCO, I'm not saying we're not academic. I am an alum. Uh, we're known to be more of going for the national title on the mat. Well, he told Hall of Fame coach David James, he goes, "Oh, we got a new concept going. Each guy has to show up to the table and there'll be a bell there. And we're going to give a trivia question. If you ring in and you get the answer right, you get 3 team points." And it actually had Coach James flabbergasted because he's like, wait. Um, the thing with Coach Shooter, too, if you look in his 20-year career there, 268 dual wins. That means he was averaging 13 and a half dual wins a year, which I didn't even realize until I just looked it up on the National Wrestling Hall of Fame site. Um, so there's that. So I love the pick. It is a very emotionally connected pick for me. So we go from one side of Missouri to another side of Missouri. My number 3 pick is Rockhurst out of Kansas City. That Kansas City Metro, where you can do something very special quickly. Um, you know, Avila in the NAI added a few years ago, and they're pretty decent. But in that Metro, you got to think D2 wise, they would be in the Great Lakes Valley Conference with Quincy, Drury, McKendree, Indy, Upper Iowa, Maryville. You know, I'm pretty excited about my MIAA conference, but make no qualms about it. That is probably the conference with the most parity. Everybody could probably beat each other, and then you'd have like a 7-way tie. Um, and keep in mind, you're also in the middle of not being too far away from those MIAA opponents. And I'll go another route. We go to all these opens as smaller schools. You are in the middle of one hell of an NAIA threshold because the heart is brutal. You've got the GPAC and the KCAC. You've got a lot of teams that will travel a short distance, and just Kansas City, Missouri, not the most expensive community to fly in or out of. So that's why I went with Rockhurst.
I love talked about it before about cities, becoming more of a wrestling presence. Kansas City would be a great place to grow wrestling. Unfortunately, this is the first time this has happened to me in my I think I've done about like 47 interviews now. This is gonna have to be a two-parter because we are running out of time and we still have 3 teams apiece. So I'm gonna say real quick, you heard from JT1 Wrestle and the Swayze, number 10 through number 4. We're gonna have to do a part two of number 3 through number 1 because we are running out of time. And look forward to part 2, wrestling fans.